Welcome to Global Insights, and today I'm very glad to host my friend Haim Ben Pesah.
Thank
Welcome.
you so much, Alex. It's good to see you.
And I don't know what to tell about you, but you have very interesting history, and if anyone is interested, they can do a search on you. But for me, main achievement you did, or main sacrifice you did, was that you supported the immigration from the Soviet Union of Russian Jews like myself, and I think we all own you in a way, yeah. So today, but we are talking about a totally different topic. We are talking about the elections, and you are quite an expert in American elections. Yeah, you took part in many campaigns. And first of all, if you could explain us what is this story behind this electors system? We are very worried about what is going to happen now with us and with Israel. You know, recently Trump said, if I am not elected 1 year, 2 years, Israel is doomed. So it was very frightening. And just today, with the General Brick, I discussed this quote said by the Trump. And of course, I understand that this was the election campaign and Trump needs the votes, so he's desperately trying to attract the Jewish votes, specifically in these key states.
Okay, first of all, most Americans don't understand how the Electoral College works in electing a president. So certainly people outside of Israel, it's very, very hard. It's a complicated system. But basically, we have 50 states in the United States. And it's based upon which candidate wins in which states out of the 50 states. Each state has a certain number of Electoral College votes. If Donald Trump wins one vote more than Kamala Harris, for instance, in the state of Pennsylvania, just gets one vote more than her, he gets all of the Electoral College votes in the state of Pennsylvania. If Kamala Harris wins just one vote more than Donald Trump in the state of Wisconsin, she gets all of the Electoral College votes in the state of Wisconsin. And this is state by state, 50 states. Whoever gets the right combination of states to get 270 Electoral College votes wins the presidency. I know that's complicated, but what it means is you can win the most votes and still lose the presidency. That's what happened in 2016. Hillary Clinton got more votes in the popular vote than Donald Trump, and still Donald Trump was elected president because he won the Electoral College. So we have now a situation where there are 50 states. 43 out of the 50 states are either for Trump or for Harris already. In other words, they're already Democrat states or Republican states. We know that Texas and Florida and Alabama and Mississippi and South Carolina and Arkansas are going to vote for Donald Trump. And we know that New York and California and New Jersey and Massachusetts and Illinois are going to vote for Kamala Harris. So that's 43 of the states. We already know how they're going to vote pretty much from polls. We know from polls. We know from prior elections. We know from how many Democrats and how many Republicans are in each state. But there are 7 states, just 7 out of the 50 states, where it's too close to call. The Democrats and Republicans are almost equal in number. And it's very hard to call. And sometimes those 7 states vote Democrat, and sometimes they vote Republican. They voted for Trump in 2016, and he won. They voted for Joe Biden in 2020, and he won in 2020. Those 7 states where it's too close, they hold the balance, and they will decide the election. And those 7 states are Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, and Georgia. And so you're going to see an intensive campaign. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars are going to be spent there. The people in those states are not going to be able to open up their television or open up the radio or look at the internet without seeing constant campaign advertisements. They're going to get in the mail every day advertisements from both campaigns. A very intense campaign is underway to win those 7 states.
Hi, I have a small question. If I understand right, the number of electors is not equal between the states, and it's also not directly related to the number of the people in this specific state. So it's just historical heritage, or?
Well, it's not equal because there's some states are bigger than others in population. You have a state like California with 40 million people. You have a state like Alaska with 600,000 people. You can't have the same number of electoral college votes in the same state. It's based upon how many congressmen and senators are in each state. For instance, in New York, you have 29 congressmen and 2 senators. So New York has 31 electoral college votes. And in Hawaii, there are 2 congressmen and 2 senators. There are 2 senators in every state, but congressmen, it's based on population. So there are 2 congressmen and 2 senators in Hawaii, so Hawaii has 4 electoral college votes. So you add the number of congressmen to the number of senators. That's how you know how many electoral college votes are in each state.
Clear. Now you explained it. So now let's go to the easy part. Who will win this swing states, this key states?
It's very, very close. And as you know, new polls came out today that show that the election is a virtual tie in both in these 7 states. Very, very close. The New York Times Siena poll came out today and shows there's just a 1% difference between the candidates. And the battleground poll states from CBS News came out with a poll on battleground states, also very, very close. So this is going to be an election that's going to be decided, even though 160 million people are going to be voting, 160 million voters, and yet a few thousand people in one of the battleground states might decide who's going to be the next president because they hold the balance. It could be decided by just a few thousand votes. Because of that, the Jewish vote is very important because Jews are one of those groups that is not completely for Trump or completely for Harris, and that's up for grabs. And Jews, there are a large number of Jewish voters in Pennsylvania, for instance, in Michigan, in Arizona, you have a Jewish vote, in Nevada. So the Jewish vote is going to be very important. And in the Jewish community, we see a very intense campaign going on both sides, very intense campaign. On the one side, you have people on the right, the pro-Israel Zionist Jews, the Orthodox Jews, they support Donald Trump. And on the other hand, you have the Jews on the left, J Street, and Jews who are anti-Zionist or Jews who don't support Israel. There are many American Jews on the left who don't support Israel. Those Jews on the left are supporting Kamala Harris, and the 2 sides are fighting with each other. I'm 68 years old. I have never seen a campaign with so much intensity and people so involved and so concerned and so much activism in the campaign. I've never seen this before in my life, and I've been following campaigns since the 1960s. Tremendous interest, tremendous involvement in this campaign. I've seen, for instance, the pro-Israel activists that got involved. They got involved because of the sanctions, because of the Harris-Biden administration imposed sanctions on the Hilltop youth in Judea and Samaria. And because of those sanctions, pro-Israel activists now have gotten involved because they think it's very dangerous that the U.S. is imposing sanctions on Israeli citizens. On the left, they got involved because Kamala Harris has promised to push for a Palestinian state. Every speech, she says Palestinian self-determination, and she's considered to be a strong supporter of Israel creating a Palestinian state. So Jews on the left who want a Palestinian state are very enthusiastically supporting her. She's getting a lot of money from Jewish billionaires who want Israel to create a Palestinian state. George Soros and many other Jewish billionaires are giving her a very large amount of money. She's raising much more money than Trump. In August, she raised 3 times as much money as Trump. So she has a big money advantage.
Yeah, but that was expected, I think, right? That was expected. It's not kind of surprise.
Yeah, to a certain degree, yes. To a certain degree, yes, but it's even more than in past years. She's getting a lot of money from people, from very wealthy donors who really want her to win the presidency. And
we have a kind of say that Jews, historically they're Democrats. So it's not that true anymore. Do you feel a change?
I think there is a change among some. Barack Obama, for instance, when he ran for president, he was known not to be pro-Israel at all. He was not supportive or sympathetic to Israel at all, and yet he got 78% of the Jewish vote. when he ran in 2008. And pro-Israel Jews were shocked that Jews would vote for somebody like this who was hostile to Israel, but he got 78% of the vote. This year, it looks very close among Jewish voters because of anti-Semitism. Jewish voters are genuinely frightened about what they see in the Democratic Party. They're frightened. I know, for instance, there's a Jewish couple that I know that I went to school with who were in my class when I went to school. One of them, he's an attorney. He's a graduate of Yale Law School, very successful attorney. His wife is a doctor in several major hospitals here. And they were never pro-Israel. They didn't care about Israel. They were very, first of all, they're atheists, and they didn't care about Zionism. Israel wasn't of any concern to them. And this year, he went to a ceremony at Yale University. They had some ceremony. He went up there. And they said, "You a Jew? You a Zionist?" There was a demonstration. There were demonstrators there. They were screaming at him, "You a Jew?" And they spit on him and they pushed him. And he was shocked. This never happened to him before. He's my age. He's 68 also. And this never happened to him before. His wife in the hospitals, including two Jewish hospitals, she said she's constantly getting anti-Semitic remarks and taunts and insults from patients and from staff. And if she complains about it, nobody does anything about it. They're very worried. And these two people who never voted Republican in their life, they're in their 60s, and they never once voted Republican. This year, they're voting for Trump. So there is a change. There is a change taking place because of the fear. There's a tremendous fear in the Jewish community about the future of Israel and about anti-Semitism.
You mentioned the key states for the elections. So if we are looking on these key states, where we have substantial number of the Jewish let's say this, Jewish voters.
You have 250,000 Jews in Pennsylvania, a state which sometimes the election is decided by just 5,000 or 10,000 votes sometimes, very close in Pennsylvania. And there are 250,000 Jews living there, mostly in Philadelphia and in the suburbs of Philadelphia. So that's a place where, we have an intense campaign now for the Jewish vote, very intense campaign. The Jews there are probably going crazy. I don't live in Pennsylvania, so I'm not experiencing it. But the Jews there are probably going crazy because they're probably getting mail from 10 different organizations every day, and they're doing everything they can to influence the Jewish vote there. And because it's very, very important in Michigan. There are over 100,000 Jewish voters, and Michigan is often decided by a few thousand votes. There's also a very large Arab and Muslim vote in Michigan. And the Arabs and Muslims, of course, they're supporting Kamala Harris. And you do have Jewish communities in Arizona, in Nevada, in Las Vegas, in Nevada, you have a Jewish community. Because the race is so close, it's possible that the Jews will decide the results of this election. There was a poll taken, a New York Times poll taken on just New York voters, just in New York State. And the poll showed Trump getting 50% of the Jewish vote and Kamala Harris getting 49%. That shocked people. Half of the Jews are going to vote Republican. That hasn't happened before. So there are changes that are taking place. And by the way, what we see in the Jewish community, you see in the Latino community, in the Black community, among evangelical Christians, Catholics. There are battles going on in every community to get those votes by the two campaigns. This is something going on in every community. It's a very, very intense campaign that's taking place here because America is changing. America demographically is changing. People always talk about the demographic changes in Europe. The demographic changes in America are greater than those in Europe, much greater. 42% of Americans are non-white. When I was a kid, when I was a child, it was 90%. America was 90% white. Now it's only 58%.
You say not white? You mean the Latin? You consider the immigrants from the South America not as a white?
No, some of them are, but I would say white Anglo. We call them white Anglo, meaning, in other words, non-Latino whites, because Latinos have another culture. They have a culture that they're very proud of, and whites, the white groups in America have their own culture. But white Anglo voters, in other words, white voters who are not Latino, are now 58% of the U.S. population. They were 90% 60 years ago. And it's estimated that in 10 years, the non-whites will be a majority. So this is a big demographic change. So America is a different place than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And the non-white groups tend to be more Democrat and tend to vote more Democrat and tend to be more on the left. Not always. You have quite a few Latinos in this election who are going to be supporting Trump. So the interesting thing about this election is that the overwhelming majority of voters, when asked in the poll, who did a better job on the economy? Donald Trump when he was president, or Kamala Harris and Joe Biden? Because Trump was president for 4 years. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have been in the White House almost 4 years. Who did a better job on the economy? Most Americans say Trump did a better job on the economy. Most Americans believe Trump was better. Inflation was 1% under Trump. So most Americans believe he did a better job on inflation, on interest rates, on the border, on guarding the border. Most Americans give him credit for that. So why is the race close? If 60, 70% of the American people think Trump was a better president on these issues, why is the race close? The race is close because people don't like the way Trump speaks. They don't like, he sometimes insults people and says things and tweets. And because of his personality, he's driven away some of the voters that he normally would get. So the question is, will people in the end, are they going to vote based upon the fact that they don't like some of the things that he says and the way he behaves, or are they going to vote based on the issues? That's going to be one of the big questions in the campaign that will probably decide the election.
Haim, what you are saying actually is if the Republicans would nominate a different candidate, another one, I don't know, I like DeSantis, for example. So that would create better chance for the Republicans to win the elections?
I think so. I think so. Ron DeSantis is a very disciplined candidate. He's the governor of Florida. I supported Ron DeSantis when he ran for the Republican nomination for president, but unfortunately he didn't win. And instead they nominated Trump. And I think that if the campaign, because the Harris-Biden administration is not popular. Their policies are not popular. You've had 20 million illegal aliens flooding across the border. Americans are very upset about that. You go through the big cities in the United States. You go to New York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Chicago. You go to the big cities. You can't even walk in the streets. It's all, you have people from different countries who are camped out and who have tents and are camped out on the street, or who are being put in hotels for free because there's nowhere to put them. And there's a lot of crime, and there are a lot of big drug problem, very serious problem. 70,000 Americans, at least 70,000 Americans are dying every year just from fentanyl, which is just one drug that's being brought across the border. So Americans are not happy with the way things are going, but the Democrats have one big advantage. Donald Trump has a tendency to say things that offend people or insult people and that divert attention away from the issues. The question is, will that be enough for the Democrats to win, or will the focus go back to the issues? That's probably one of the big questions in this campaign.
So if we are looking, on the situation, and for me, if I would be an American and I could affect the elections, participate in the elections, I of course would vote Trump. Not because I like Trump, I would prefer DeSantis, but I mean, the choice is clear for me. And I think for other Jews, it should be also very clear, even if you don't like Trump, sometimes you should face the reality and do whatever you have to do, That's a life. It's not always like we want it to be. So in this case, I think it should be clear. But what I don't understand, and maybe you help me to understand, because you are part of the American Jewish community. I know that you are coming from the right wing, but try to be, try to be independent from your political views. Why Jews historically support Democrats? So what caused the Jews of United States to vote for Democrats, elections after elections after elections?
Most Jews from America, they're their roots are from Russia. Most Jews in America. Originally, their grandparents, great-grandparents came from Russia.
It's called the Palais of Settlement. Yeah, this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the Jews that came from Russia were on the left, supported the left when they came here. Why? Because in Russia, the right was identified with the church, with the Tsar, with the pogroms. And so Jews, and the left was promising equality to the Jews. They promised equality. Of course, under the Soviet Union, they didn't get equality. It was a lie. They didn't get it. But they promised equality. They promised an end to the pogroms and an end to anti-Semitism and racism and all. We're not going to have any more races or religion. And the Jews like that message. That's why the Jews were attracted, because historically, in the Jewish mind, the right was identified with anti-Semitism, with pogroms, with the Tsar, and in other countries too. The right was identified with that in the mind of Jews historically, and so that's why Jews historically are on the left. The problem is now the anti-Semitism is coming mostly from the left. Most of the anti-Semitism is on the left, and Israelis are in for a big shock if Kamala Harris wins. They're in for a big shock.
So another question, as an American Jew, you help me to understand another question. For an typical average American Jewish family, how is important the existence of Israel? Is it a key issue when they're going to vote?
Unfortunately, no. It's not important to most, and that's unfortunate. But it's been proven. That's why Obama got 78% of the Jewish vote. If Israel was important, 78% of the Jews in America would not have voted for Obama. We saw even during the Holocaust, when 6 million Jews were murdered in Europe, Jews voted for Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who refused to do anything to save the Jews in Europe. His opponent, Thomas Dewey, his Republican opponent, Thomas Dewey, had promised to take action to try to save the Jews. And the Jews voted overwhelmingly for Roosevelt, even though they knew the Jews were being murdered in Europe. So there's a history of Jews not being concerned about Jewish issues, because there's a lot of assimilation and intermarriage in America. Doug Emhoff is the husband of Kamala Harris, the Jewish husband of Kamala Harris. He has said, we have to separate American Jews from Israel. He's concerned that he said, don't blame us for what Israel does. We don't support Israel. We don't agree with what the Israeli government is doing in Israeli policies. Don't blame us. He says we must stop associating Jews with Israel. He's trying to get out of the anti-Semitic problems by doing that. But of course, that means that American Jews are going to be betraying Israel.
By the way, it never worked. It never worked in the history to pretend you are not involved. You are not part of it.
It actually makes things worse. It actually, in the end, makes things worse. The countries where were the most assimilated Jews? The most assimilated Jews were in Germany and Austria, and that's where Adolf Hitler came into power. So it never works. It never works, and it always, in fact, it backfires. But many Jews haven't changed. Some Jews are beginning to wake up now because of anti-Semitism. There really is a very, very violent type of anti-Semitism that's taking hold in America. Jews are being attacked in the streets in America. It's very. I know a Jew from the Soviet Union, who came to America, lives in America, and he went past one of the demonstrations to go to work. The streets are full of demonstrators now. He was going to work, and someone in the crowd saw him, and he said to them, "I'm not." And he didn't care about Jewish or Israel. He wasn't interested in any of that. And one of them said, and he said, "I'm from Russia. I'm from Soviet Union. I'm not. Don't blame me." He said, "Oh, you're from Russia?" One of the people in the crowd said, "Yezid." They called him in the crowd, and the whole crowd, they didn't even know what it means, but they knew it's an insult against Jews. The crowd of Arabs and Muslims started chanting "Jid, Jid, Jid" against him. He said, "I couldn't believe this." He said, "I came to America to be called Jid in America?" He said, "I can't believe." So this is something that hopefully will wake some Jews up. I hope it will wake Jews up. And to a certain degree, I think, it is causing Jews to wake up. I think that more Jews are thinking about Aliyah, are thinking about moving to Israel because of this. And I do think there'll be an increase in Aliyah, but it's not what it should be. What it should be, I think, you know that I believe all Jews belong in Israel. I believe in Aliyah for all Jews. But hopefully, at least as many Jews as possible will decide to move to Israel as a result of this. People feel very, very threatened by this. They really feel threatened by this. Now, if Trump wins, they're going to be relieved because they're going to have a president who they're going to
We will
feel
have
is
a
not
break for a few years, I mean, but
right.
it's not more than that, I think.
Right. I think the anti-Semitism will still be there, and you'll still see it because you'll still have the demonstrations and you'll still have everything else and the attacks on Israel and the attacks on Jews. That will continue to take place. But you'll have someone in the White House that won't be encouraging it. And that, so that will cause some Jews to feel a sense of relief. If Kamala Harris wins, I think Jews are going to be, especially Orthodox Jews and pro-Israel Jews and Jews that don't want to run away from their Jewishness, I think they're going to be very concerned if she wins. I think they're going to be very worried about their future. And you're going to see one of the shocks that's going to happen immediately. She's going to put pressure on Israel not to continue the fight against Hamas in Gaza, not to go against Hezbollah or Iran, and to create a Palestinian state. You're going to see that immediately. She's going to start massive pressure on Israel, including holding up arms shipments and other aid. It's, so that might happen. That might be a blessing, though, in disguise, because I think Israel has to prepare itself for the day when the United States is not going to continue to give aid. Aid to Israel, foreign aid in America is very unpopular. And by the way, the war between Russia and Ukraine has made foreign aid more unpopular. Why? Because the United States is giving so much to Ukraine. Many Americans don't like this. They don't like that. They don't want to give
previously
so much.
it was like the largest, when we saw the list of the countries who get this support, American support, Israel was always like taking the first places. But now, compared to the help, the aid the Ukraine is getting, we're just very small numbers, like.
But people, but the anti-Semitic propagandists don't tell the American people that. And the American people don't understand things like that. And they're just against all foreign aid. They're against all foreign aid. And believe it or not, they blame the Jews for the foreign aid to Ukraine as well. You know that in the end, when there's a problem, the anti-Semites blame the Jews for everything. And they blame the Jews because AIPAC, the pro-Israel lobby, they lobby for foreign aid for Israel, but foreign aid for Israel, the administration now, the administration now ties that to Ukraine and all these other countries. So they have to lobby for the whole foreign aid package if they want foreign aid to Israel. So people blame the Jews and say, we're spending all of our money that we should be keeping here in the United States because of these Jews. It's that also causes anti-Semitism. The best thing for Israel, would be if Israel didn't get the foreign aid and was independent. That would be the best and the safest thing for Israel, in my opinion. But it's something Jews may learn very quickly. If Kamala Harris becomes president, they may not have a choice. They may not have a choice because I think she's going to use foreign aid to threaten Israel. And she's already been criticizing. She's even critical of Biden. She thinks Biden hasn't been tough enough on Israel. And so, this is the type of situation we're going to be facing, unfortunately. By the way, foreign aid to Israel is a very small part of Israel's economy. It's not the foreign aid that Israel is dependent on. It's the weapons that Israel's dependent on.
Weapons, yes.
Yeah, that's the only the foreign aid, the $3.8 billion, Israel can easily live without that. But the weapons, to mass produce weapons, that is a difficult challenge for a country.
I think it's not possible today to be engaged in the large scale war without American weapons. And it's not only for Israel, I think also the other countries. You see the Ukraine or other countries, it's the same. So this is the main problem for us. And of course, we need American veto in the United Nations. So if America will, withdraw from its automatic veto, we will run into problems very fast.
But what if you have Jewish scientists in Israel with Jewish brain? But most of the weapons in America are created by Jews. Are created by Jewish scientists. Most of the scientists in America building the weapons and technology are Jews. What if Jewish brains built for Israel? And I know it's difficult because it's a small country and it has a smaller budget, and to mass produce in a small country is not easy. It's not easy. That's true. But what if you had Jewish scientists producing very advanced missiles that can strike out the missiles of our enemies, very advanced, and the tanks, the Merkava tank is probably the best tank in the world, I think. I think it's an excellent.
Explain what is the problem. The problem is not in the specific, very precise weapons, but once you have a large-scale war, like you have now in Ukraine, so they need every day 50,000, shells, and this is, today if you're going around the world, only in the United States, and unfortunately in Iran they can produce, former Soviet Union, Russia. But not in many places you can do that. Even Germany, Italy, they are not able today to supply themselves with the ammunitions. I mean, for the war, not for the military operation. But once you have, like, if you have in Ukraine 2 years of war, every day you need a huge number of the bombs and shells, and this is a big problem. And for the country like Israel, it would be a problem to independently, like produce it.
No, I agree with you. But what if Israel wins wars quickly, like in the 6-Day War? 6-Day War, they can do it. And once upon a time, this was always a problem for Israel. Since Israel was created in 1948, there was always a problem. And they managed by winning quickly. If we had won quickly in Gaza, and if we win quickly, if we go all out and win quickly and win like we did in the past, then it wouldn't be a problem, and we wouldn't need it. And I think the question is, can Israel? The question is, can Israel win quickly again? I think they can. Yes, but anyway, that's another. That's a program for another. Yes, for another video. Yes.
Haim Ben Pesah, thank you very much for explaining the elections in the United States and the possible influence of the Jewish vote for these elections. We will keep eyes on this till November 5th, and let's hope for the positive results for us at least. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.